Hi, I'm Jason Thoms, and I am the founder and artistic director of Dakota Pro Musica. And I have with me today Nita Karpf, who is the scholar and expert on Esther, the Beautiful Queen, who I've been talking with for a number of months, and my father talked with for a couple of years, maybe. And I'm just excited that Nita is going to be a partner with us in our upcoming concerts and recording sessions. So, Nita, thanks very much for taking a little time to chat on Zoom.
Thank you for asking me.
So, you've been working with the Esther piece for quite a while. Your edition for AR editions was published in 2000, I believe. So, can you tell me a little bit about how you happened upon Esther and why you decided to make a critical edition of the piece?
Well, I was giving a conference paper, academic conference paper, and I want to say this has got to be in the early 90s. And I was talking about some performers who only identified the piece as the cantata of Esther, which was very often a way it was identified in the press.
Right.
And a gentleman in the audience who happened to be affiliated with the Library of Congress stood up and said, Nita, let me tell you, that's William Bradbury's Esther the Beautiful Queen,
Hmm.
which surprised me. I did not know he had created this rather lengthy work for him. We all think of him as the composer of many, many beloved hymns, but we don't think of him as stitching together something this complicated for him and for his
Right.
times. And as I began to look into it, there was just a barrage of reviews all over the world of this piece. And I thought, oh, I've got to do this. But it took a long time, a very long time. So
Yeah.
it became kind of a quilt. Whereas I was taking notes off of microfilm, off of internet databases, and just gradually compiling like a gigantic Esther diary of sorts or a journal, and just keeping track of all the performances. And then after that, I wanted, well, are there reviews or is this just a mention in a
Hmm.
newspaper? Then after that, I started noticing images popping up. And of course, there is a substantial section in the middle of my book of as many illustrations as my publisher would let me put in. They don't like those. But anyways, and I began to realize this was an example of a very early piece of kind of quasi religious music theater, which was photographed a whole lot, even with early photographic techniques or sketched or something like that. But anyways, so one thing just kept going, and in the meantime, I had all kinds of other projects to do in order to maintain my job, of course, as an academic person. But I kept going back to this, so it's been a lot of fun. A lot.
Yeah. So when you created the AR edition, that you had to use the original score, right?
That is correct. The 1856 score that Bradbury published himself. Yes.
Okay. So when you create an AR edition, they're very specific about it having to be just like the original, just in a modern notation, correct?
Yes, that is correct. They check that.
Mm.
Okay. So I purchased a digital copy of the original score. I believe it was the Library of Congress um, that I worked with for that. And of course, then that had to be included with my version of the score that I sent them using, uh, notation software.
Okay.
So yes, it had to be authentic, note
Mm.
for note. Yeah. But the only difference that you and I have talked about is Bradbury organized his choral scores in TASB order: tenor, alto, soprano, bass. So that is the only change I was allowed to make. Actually, I didn't even ask to. They wanted the score order to be SATB.
Okay. Yeah,
Okay.
nice.
Imagine you and the Dakota Pro Musica, reading TASB scoring. Believe me, it doesn't sound terribly confusing, but when you actually try to do it, your eye automatically goes to my line,
Right,
in the
right.
score, and you're like, oh, this isn't right. It sounds weird. Yeah. So,
Yeah,
anyway, that was probably, the rest of it, as you know, having now studied the score and prepared it yourself, that it's it's genuine Bradbury all the way.
right,
A lot of
right.
hymns, a lot of other things in there too, but a lot of hymns. Didn't
Yeah,
touch
yeah,
on.
really nice. Well, it's really kind of a fun score.
Yeah, yeah.
So one question I had about when I was reading your book, you talked about the TASB as a pretty common way that folks wrote out music in the mid 19th century. And I've always kind of heard like in the Sacred Harp music and things like that,
Yes.
that the tenor actually had the melody. But are you saying that actually the score was written so the soprano should have the melody? Because I had always heard, well, back in the Sacred Harp time, the tenor had the melody like in a Renaissance motet using a canis firmus or something like that.
Or something like that. Yeah, that's debatable.
Okay.
Certainly, there's a lot of Sacred Heart music wherein, yes, tenor has the melody, or it was called the air.
Hmm.
I don't know if you ever saw that
Yeah.
configuration as well. In this case, the soprano part was right above the bass, and the soprano did have the melody, and that's because the accompanist would either play the soprano and bass part literally, or they would use them as a basis to create an
Right.
accompaniment, which is the authentic way to do it. And I understand you're going to do it this way, which I can't wait to hear what that really sounds like.
Yeah, well, yeah. So it's in some ways it's kind of would be similar to a continuo line in Baroque music, where a continuo keyboardist would just kind of look at the bass line plus maybe some uh, different markings, which would help them figure out what chords it was. In this case, Bradbury was creating a little shorthand, uh, so he didn't have to write out a piano part because he was probably accompanying this. Is that true?
Oh yeah, much of the time, and probably on some kind of cabinet organ or reed organ, a melodeon, as opposed to a piano, simply
Okay.
because where he went to conduct the piece, these little country churches might not have had a pipe organ, they might not have had a piano, but they would probably have a small reed organ that was portable. So,
Okay.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's interesting just to think about how this piece would have traveled, especially
yes,
during Bradbury's time before it got extravagant.
yeah, right, exactly. Very extravagant, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah, it was a very portable piece. The original score was probably, I don't know, 4 by 6, like a large postcard, maybe
Hmm.
size. Um, Printed on newsprint, bound in cardboard, a very inexpensive way of reproducing this, and very lightweight, and it could be put in a gentleman's breast pocket or something like that. So yeah, it became just totally portable
Hmm.
that way. Yeah.
Yeah, that's neat. So you when you were researching the book, or kind of when you created the score,
Yes.
was it all kind of happening at the same time? You're kind of researching the whole piece, and you were kind of working on the score, and then eventually you decided, okay, I have enough for a book.
Yes, exactly. When AR Editions asked me to create an introduction, uh, yes, there's some things known about Bradbury, but I wanted to know more because I couldn't believe that a gentleman that famous during his lifetime had totally disappeared, and
Right.
that's what it looked like to me.
Hmm.
So I did a lot of digging, and then, of course, as a researcher, I can tell you that's the wrong way to go. Although I'm doing it the same way, because then you've got this mountain of information that you've got to scale down into something that's manageable. So, anyways, yeah, I just had mountains and file after file of information about him. Got it down to a word count that ARED would take. and then realize, well, now what? I've got all this material. What am I going to do? You know?
Right.
So it's one thing led to another. And when I wrote the book about Esther that came out a couple of years ago, I had put in a preliminary chapter that is, in fact, a longer version of Bradbury's biography. And then to do that, I did it the same way again. Another mountain of research took place. And so now there's a whole book just about him in great detail that might come out in my lifetime. Well, it probably will. I've, I've got somebody lined up if my other plan doesn't work. But, anyways, yes, that's how this is going.
Yeah, neat. Well, I mean, I guess we all kind of know some Bradbury hymns, right? We know like Jesus Loves Me and Sweet Hour of Prayer and Just As I Am.
Yes.
And in fact, when we do our performances with Dakota Pro Musica, we're going to actually start off the concert by doing a little Bradbury hymn sing with the
Oh,
whole
nice.
audience,
Oh,
just so
good.
that
Oh,
we
good.
can get into the mode together a little bit.
Right, right. And I think if they are completely unfamiliar with Esther, they're going to hear the same kinds of things in
Right.
the score. But the other things that they're going to realize is there's somebody up there playing piano who it may not be necessarily improvising at the moment, but had to.
Yeah.
There's really no accompaniment there in that.
Right.
And so, you know, that's really important to think about just how this took place. But the other thing, going back to that idea, I think it's really interesting to think about how much American musicians, especially music educators like Bradbury, abandon European methods. Yes, we have this improvisational idea going on, but it's not with figured bass, it's
Hmm.
not with thorough bass or any of that. It is strictly an American version of that kind of idea, which is really neat when you think about it, especially with our, what is it, 250th anniversary coming up. There's all kinds
Right.
of neat little connections there, I think.
Well, this summer is the 170th anniversary of Bradbury and Caddy working on this piece together. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yes,
that was one of the reasons it was attractive to me
yes.
as I was looking at it. I was like, well, this is year 170.
Yeah, yeah,
This has been a part of American tradition for a very long time.
very
So,
long time. Yep, indeed.
well, I think you've talked to my father and stuff, but I've at least known about the oratorio Esther, and just called Esther, as you said before, because my great grandfather sang the role of the king in the late 20s, early 30s in Chicago as they were trying to raise money to build the church Grace Lutheran in River
Right,
Forest, Illinois,
right.
uh, kind of like at the moment of the depression. So they were trying to
Yeah,
raise money
yeah.
and do all that at the same time. But then, based on even with what I saw in your book, it just seemed like the piece of music disappeared after the Great Depression. And do you have any sense of what happened there?
Well, I think people were economy weary. Um, they really were tired of trying to continue to piece together family and household budgets and to keep everything going, keep their churches going, keep everything going. And the piece seems to go through periods where it's less popular. But the problem was too, that's when Broadway really comes on, you
Hmm.
know, and those kinds of shows. And people were no longer interested in something that was as homespun as Bradbury and
Right.
Esther were. Okay, they were more interested in going and seeing professionals do their thing. And so, we were no longer, well, you and I haven't talked just now about the fact that this became a costume piece. And it
Right.
was something Bradbury did not want, but he had no control over it. When you publish something, it's out there,
Yeah.
like it or not. And communities and audiences and everybody kind of took it out of his hands and made it into a costume piece. People were raiding their attics. It was a sort of dress up piece of sorts. That continued for a while, and then we had the unfortunate occurrence of World War II, where everything just kind of fell by the wayside.
Right.
It tried to make a brief return after that, but by then, music is so changed. you've got jazz, you've got bebop, you've got all kinds of other styles. So Bradbury no longer sounds relevant
Right.
as it did.
It sounds 19th. There's a lot of moments and you think, wow, this is very 19th century.
Yes, yes, indeed. And I think, excuse me, after the World War II, people wanted to move on,
Yeah.
and so you've got, and then you've got things coming along like, oh, I don't know, West Side Story, or I'm just, thinking
Hmm.
along those lines, and that was it.
Yeah.
Little old,
Yeah.
little old Lester could no longer compete.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. So do you know, was there are there any recordings of Esther at all from back in the early 20th century?
You own that one. You are the
Yeah.
first.
Yeah, look, it
Yeah,
just seemed like
yeah,
it was more of a community. It wasn't a professional stage piece. It was more of like a
right,
community event. And so
right.
likely, people wouldn't have spent the money to try to record an aria from Esther or something like that. Most of the early recordings are an aria from some famous opera, right? I
Something,
mean,
or oratorio or something, and yeah,
yeah.
so that would not have taken place for a lot of reasons. Number one, a lot of performances took place in very devout environments. Not
Mm,
all of them, but a lot of them did,
yeah.
and they might not have felt comfortable recording this piece.
Right.
You can just imagine, as you know the score very well, that Esther could be a star depending on who's playing her, how
Hmm.
she's dressing, how she's acting on stage, because you and I both know there's a lot of leeway there. But that would be the sentiment and the mentality that a more devout church would not want
Right.
associated with them at all. Um, so it just didn't really catch on that way at
Yeah,
all.
that's interesting.
Yeah, so this is you're the star now.
So you think there were some performances that maybe tried to happen in the middle of the 20th century? I mean, since your AR edition has been printed, do you know of any performances that have happened in the last 25 years?
I know of one. I believe it's 2011. It is done by a church in London, the parishioners of which I believe it's Methodist, but the parishioners are Ghanaian Methodists.
Huh.
And I have tried to contact them many times, and unfortunately, no reply. Um, there have been a couple of performances, possibly in the Caribbean. Again, British connection,
Yeah.
because Bradbury spent time there
Yeah.
in
Interesting.
the 1840s. So, yeah. But as far as anything really recent, no. Um, would kids love to do this? I believe so, with a really good director who knows how to work with kids,
Yeah.
and encourage them to make their own costumes out of, the trunk of Granny's attic or something.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Oh, you've seen the pictures. It only takes a bed sheet to create a gown with a tie from a curtain,
Right.
a, a
Yeah, that
hasuera.
we're trying to figure out. We're not going to have costumes for our performances, but we're gonna try to treat it more like the original Bradbury goal. But we actually have a person in our community here, Shane Balkowski, who creates wet plate photography. And we're actually going to have our Esther lead, Fotina. She's going to go get her picture taken on with wet plate technology,
Oh,
uh, and we're hoping to use that on the CD cover. And so we're trying to figure out what is she just going to wear a bed sheet tied with a tied with some
well, no, a
drapery?
tie with a drapery cord. It depends. I mean, that was all the rage.
Yeah,
That was one inexpensive, simple way to do it. Um, she could make a cardboard crown, which was very often done, and they'd cut little stars out and just paste
yeah.
it on. That old flower paste that you could make,
Hmm.
right? Okay. And a hasueros would wear probably a couch cover, and they sewed paper around the edges of it, put little marks on it to make it look like ermine, the
Oh,
fur,
nice.
white with little black flecks in it. Yeah.
Yeah.
deal with the crown. And he would have a scepter, of course.
Oh yeah.
And it was very often a curtain rod. Scepter, I've almost never seen a photographer drawing with him actually holding a scepter.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's real. And he's
Well,
had,
it just seems like it must have been, someone saw or heard about Esther, and they're like, "Oh, we got to do this in our community." And
yep.
the one we're going to do one of our performances in our set here in Valley City, and that's one of the ones you have documented in your book.
Hmm.
That there was a performance by the Valley City High School here in Valley City in 1911, February of 1911,
Yes.
and in the old armory. And there's a picture in there of the whole cast standing outside, looking very cold as they were standing outside in February to get a group picture, which I imagine was not a quick thing to do, even in
Mm-mm.
1911. So,
No, no.
uh, so we're excited to be able to use a story in your book and try to bring it back. What this is 115 years later.
Yes, yes, and absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And the Barnes County Historical Society, who worked with you on your book,
Yes.
they're working with us and going to be co-sponsors of this in Valley City. So we're excited. We had our very first rehearsal with the choir on Tuesday night this week, and you could the choir is just smiling the
Oh,
entire
good,
time. I
good,
mean, it's
good.
just every movement is fun. And, you start to hear the music, and they just they're kind of chuckling and laughing, like, oh, this is gonna be a fun one,
Oh
and
yeah, and it is. It is. Not that the story isn't serious, but Bradbury saw the humor in it.
yeah,
I do believe in the light moments. And he didn't deny their existence. It's not that there are some differences between his version or Katie's version, his friend who wrote the text,
yeah,
and the biblical version.
you're right,
Bradbury's version is much more optimistic, hopeful, celebratory in a lot of ways, I think,
right,
which is another thing I just loved about the piece.
yeah. Well, I've been kind of calling it Esther the Disney version. So
Yeah, yeah, right.
there's a
Right.
lot. There's a lot of even when the tides turn on Haman, it seems more joyful and fun,
Yeah, right,
and
right.
than mean and evil. So
Yeah. Yeah, he's
well,
just sort of cast aside, Haman is. Like he's kind of like a nuisance. Oh, we can get rid of him.
my son is going to be singing the role of Haman. So
All right. Oh, I can't
yeah,
wait.
he can be annoying sometimes too. So.
Oh, really? Oh, I won't quote you, but he'll watch this and he'll know you just
Yeah,
said
that's right. Yeah. Well,
that.
he's finishing his undergraduate degree in voice and opera in Portland, and so
Oh, my
he's flying
son.
out to be
Son.
Haman. And we
Yes.
have a couple other friends of mine who sing with professional choirs all over the country. They're coming in. Edmund Milley is going to be the bass, and Sylvia Leith is going to be alto. And
Wow.
then my friend Fotina Naumenko, she teaches at Shenandoah University or Conservatory in Virginia, and she's our Esther. And
Wow.
then we have a gentleman who just moved here to North Dakota, actually to teach at Minot State, John Swedberg. He's going to be our Mordecai. So we
Oh,
have
good.
some great, talented, nationally known choral singers and soloists who will be part of this. We're
Good.
flying in an old Bismarck friend, Michael Langer from North Carolina. He's going to be our pianist. And we're going to have you there to give a
The
little
messenger.
pre-concert
Okay.
lecture.
Pre-con. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
and then you're
Yep.
going to be
Yep.
our narrator or our reader because there's some
Messenger.
scripture in the
Yeah, reader or messenger, and it doesn't matter which. It varies, but yeah, there's scripture in there. Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 Well, I'm just excited that we're able to. We've been kind of talking about it as reviving Esther,
Yeah.
and
Absolutely.
and to see if uh, I think now, 170 years later, I think this piece has a fun, unique experience that connects to a wide variety of genres in the 19th century. There's kind of a pseudo barbershop and kind of fun lilting dancing kind of music, and I
Yeah.
think the audience members will probably be smiling most of the time while they listen to this piece.
Yeah, and if they don't, then we'll just have to crank it up a couple more notches. And my part of this requires that I learn some of those names.
Yeah.
Those are wow. Yeah,
Every once in a
I'm
while, when
that's
you're
a work
reading
in
Bible
progress.
verses, you get some names in there. You're like, I'm not quite sure how I want to say this name.
Yeah, right, right. Well, I'm gonna make sure I check some official pronunciations and get this right. But anyways, I'm ready to go. I took apart one of the scores
Nice.
and create
Well,
nice
we are
flat
excited to have you
flat
come
color.
out and join us. I know you'll be here on June 11th for our dress rehearsal, but our
Yes,
performances are June 12th at Assumption Abbey in Richardson, which is a great kind of Gothic-like cathedral. So that's kind of treating it like an oratorio. And then we're
yes.
going to be in Valley City at the Vagstad Auditorium at Valley City State University, which we're kind of treating it like it's an opera because it's an old concert hall.
There you
And
go.
then we're going to bring it to Trinity Lutheran Church here in Bismarck on June 14th, and that's where I'm trying to treat it like a cantata. So there's three
Yeah,
different ways that people talked about Esther as an oratorio, an opera, and as a cantata. And I thought it
yeah.
would be fun to try to perform in three different venues that we maybe associate those names with. So,
Right, right. Great, excellent.
well, thanks for your time, Nita. We're looking forward to having you as a part of our experience and recording process. And we're thankful for all the work that you put in so that it makes it a little easier on us as we're preparing.
Oh, well, thank you. Thanks for this interview. And I've got lots of other things to send you. Okay, they're coming.
All right, excellent.